"You know," said Mr. Darling, "I have the strangest feeling that I've seen that ship before, a long time ago, when I was very young." You know, it feels like just yesterday that we were celebrating the 80th anniversary of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Well, that's probably because it was yesterday. It was the 80th anniversary of her nationwide release back in 1938. And today we just so happen to be celebrating yet another milestone of a famous Disney film. And time certainly does fly, doesn't he? Well, I don't know about Time himself, but I do know of someone in our next story who does. My friends, today is the 65th anniversary of Walt Disney's Peter Pan, one of my dearest favorites, and in light of the day, I thought it only fitting that I try to pay tribute to this wonderful film as best as I can. Now, of course, we all know the story of Peter Pan, or the boy who wouldn't grow up, how he flew with 3 children from London to a mystical isle where time stops via the second star to the right, where pirates lurk in Skull Rock, and pixies fly about the night sky, where mermaids splash in the lagoon, and natives scout the island with a watchful eye, where crocodiles tick and neverbirds soar. There's something undeniably charming about this whole thing. No doubt it's that very same charm that Walt Disney saw when he discovered J.M. Barrie's play for the first time. Or rather, should I say, fell into it, as one time when Walt was performing Peter Pan in the school play, his brother Roy had hooked up all these wires to make it look like he was flying. Unfortunately, halfway through the performance, the wires broke and poor Walt went soaring into the audience. Either way, it's pretty clear that this character was very dear to Walt, and who could blame him? Who wouldn't want to soar off to a magical place where you never have to grow up and you can escape the real world? I, like many others, have fond memories of this film. I remember feeling so bad for poor Nana as she got kicked out of the house, and I remember wanting all the toys in the Darlings' nursery. But then, I can't help but recall that feeling of intrigue when we first see Peter's silhouette against the night sky. And I'll never forget that feeling of wonderment when we saw the Darling children fly for the very first time. And one of my most vivid memories is wanting to go to Neverland the very first instance that we saw it. I remember cheering on Peter as he dueled with Captain Hook, and I remember laughing so hard as the crocodile chased that old codfish off into the horizon. But most of all, I remember that tingly feeling when we see the Jolly Roger covered in pixie dust and soaring off into the night. And it didn't stop at just the film. I probably had the story read to me just as many times as I watched the VHS, which was pretty much almost every day. And I remember listening to the cassette with all of the songs on it and singing and dancing and pretending like I was in the movie itself. But it was truly the Disney parks that really helped open the world up for me. I'd always wanted to sail, and I'd always wanted to fly, both preferably on a pirate ship. So when it came to Peter Pan's flight, that was when all of my fondest dreams had come true. And I'll never forget seeing Peter Pan and Captain Hook sword fight on the balcony of Cinderella's castle in the surprise celebration show. Do you remember that? And, well, not to toot my own horn, but at that point I could pretty much quote the entire movie backwards and forwards. I tried to impress Peter Pan and Wendy when I met them for the first time, and, well, Peter certainly seemed to approve of my Captain Hook impression. Captain Hook, on the other hand, wasn't too impressed. But all of those years of the golden age of my childhood, I'd spend one day pretending to be Peter Pan and another day trying to be Captain Hook, and sometimes I'd try to be both of them in the same day. And all those years I'd be brushing up on my impression, trying to sound like Hans Conried or Corey Burton, my voice acting idol. And fast forward all those years later to 2013, when I actually had the honor of meeting Corey Burton at the D23 Expo, dressed as Captain Hook, and I did my impression for him, and, well, if my memory serves me correctly, he seemed pretty impressed. And to get that kind of reaction from him was more than I could have ever dreamed of. But all of those years growing up, Neverland was one of the places that I visited the most in my dreams. And I'll never forget spending endless hours playing the video games and computer games and collecting all the toys that I could. And as odd as it may sound, one thing that I really, really wanted as a kid was a Peter Pan action figure or a plush, like we saw in Return to Neverland. And I may be the odd one out here, but I actually really liked the sequel. Yeah, there are a lot of things that could have been done differently, but as the film became a franchise, I truly loved growing up with it. Whether it was the Disney Fairies franchise, which to this day I still can't get enough of those films, to my uneasy relationship with Jake and the Neverland Pirates, although if it makes my younger cousins laugh, I guess I can't complain very much now, can I? All the way up to Captain Hook, Peter Pan, and all the other Neverland characters joined the cast of my all-time favorite show, Once Upon a Time. I truly loved it all. And we owe it to the boy who wouldn't grow up. And in this case, I'm not just talking about Peter Pan. I'm talking about Walt Disney himself. You see, Walt was the kind of guy who said that the real trouble with the world was that too many people had grown up. That adults were just children grown up anyways, and that growing up didn't just mean growing old. It meant that that's when you stopped believing. And to be honest, I'm kind of having trouble with that. Oh, not the belief part. I will always believe. But at the end of the day, I am a lost boy. The only thing is, I've forgotten how to fly. And I'm not as young as I used to be. And I highly doubt that Peter will be flying by my window anytime soon. But it was thanks to J.M. Barrie, through Peter Pan, and from Walt Disney that I learned that growing old is mandatory, but growing up is optional. As we continue to tell this story far into the future, whether it be through the Disney version or the original play, or whatever other iteration that may exist or is yet to come, my hope is that children from all over the world, of all ages, will remember to never stop believing, to continue to tell stories to let our imaginations soar. And as we grow old, while we may not be able to visit Neverland like we used to, we'll always remember the adventures we had, the memories we made, to keep our dreams alive. And as we look out the window to the second star to the right, we'll know that somewhere Peter Pan is whisking away a new young dreamer to have an awfully big adventure that they'll treasure forever. And forever is an awfully long time. Everything about this fantastic film is so iconic. From the characters to the animation, the music, the backgrounds, the voice acting, everything! But who's to thank for all of these adventures? Well, first and foremost, we thank J.M. Barrie for writing this ingenious tale in the first place. We thank Walt Disney and his crew of animators and artists, as well as other notable and legendary talent that helped bring this story to life in a way that we had never seen before. And as far as characters go, we thank Tinker Bell and Wendy Darling and her brothers Michael and John, Mr. and Mrs. Darling, and don't forget about Nana. We can even thank the dastardly Captain Hook and Mr. Smee, as well as all of the other pirates, as well as the Lost Boys, the Mermaids, Tiger Lily, and even Tick-Tock the Crocodile. But, most importantly, we thank Peter Pan for bringing us to Neverland in the first place, for helping our happy thoughts make us feel like we're soaring through the clouds, and for reminding us to never, ever grow up. Happy 65th anniversary to Walt Disney's Peter Pan. Thank you so much for helping us to believe.